Hi, I'm Laura.
Hey, I'm Stefan, and you're listening to Attributed, a podcast library by Dreamdata.
The purpose of it is to store and share all the knowledge that we have gathered across Dreamdata employees through our LinkedIn Lives, podcasts, and webinars.
The typical topics you'll find here can be stuff like marketing,
Sales,
B2B ads,
operations,
social selling maybe. I'm really excited today because I'm actually meeting just for the second time in my life a person I've been following for almost 10 years on the internet. Even back from the day when Rand was just drawing on whiteboards and everything back at Moss. That's almost 10 years ago now, right, Rand?
Sounds right, Stefan. Good to be here. Good to see you.
Yeah, I'm really pleased that you said yes to join this little conversation. The reason why I chose this topic for us, how to make it big marketing impacts with small budgets, is that I happened to watch two of your talks in New York in November last year, and I could definitely hear that. Now that you're running a bootstrap model, you're very carefully selecting what to spend your time on and where do you actually get the most impact with what you invest your time on. So in that sense, I'm also honored that you decided to say yes to join us today. But Rand, I've been following you for a long while, but there's probably people joining who haven't. So kind of what is the quick intro to Rand Fishkin? And perhaps after that, what's SparkToro?
Yeah, so let's see, for folks in the marketing world, they might know me from my previous startup, which was called Moz. That was in the SEO software space. I was there for a long time, 17 years actually. So started in 2001. I dropped out of college and started working with my mom, Jillian, who became my co-founder at Moz. And then initially it was a consulting business, then an SEO software business, raised a bunch of venture capital, realized raising a bunch of venture capital, probably a mistake, should not do that again. And in 2018, I left and started SparkToro, which is an audience research software company with my co-founder, Casey. And Stefan, you know, like historically, audience research has meant surveys and interviews. But we think that a big part of what you can do with audience research is actually passively collected data at scale. So you can get instant answers to questions like, what are the demographics of architects in the United States? Or what YouTube channels do dentists in California watch and subscribe to? Or which social accounts are most popular with VPs of marketing at B2B SaaS companies? And SparkToro, after lots and lots of work and lots of different data sources, we can answer those questions. And that's what the software does today. I'm also running a second company, which not a lot of people know, called Snack Bar Studio. And that is an indie video game company. It's making its first game. And so I'll get to test out my marketing chops with a consumer product for the first time in a couple of years here when it launches.
That's very exciting. For SparkToro, who's the typical buyers and what are the use cases that they're trying to solve with the product?
Yeah, it's the second one ranges massively. The first one right now, it is primarily marketers who are in-house at brands, some product leaders, you know, directors of product, VPs of product, who are trying to learn more about their audience before they build things or what to design. And then a ton of agencies and consultants. I think that's almost 40% of our customers are agencies and consultants. They work in marketing strategy, they work in content strategy, they work in SEO and paid search and social media marketing, PR, and they use it to answer those specific questions around where can I find my audience online so that I can go reach them with the right message at the right time in the right place.
I can say at least the free product I've enjoyed using a couple of times where I kind of run dry on, like, I think I've talked to all the influencers in this industry, like who more can I talk to? And then you have YouTube channels, you're following hashtags and all those things that you might not have been thinking about as I'm just sitting in my own little cycle. Yeah,
podcasts, subreddits, social accounts, search keywords now. So that the keywords and phrases that people type into Google, looks at websites and sort of hidden gem websites. It shows networks. So a lot of people are very interested in a feature we launched with V2 recently, which is seeing which social networks are more popular and less popular with a given audience. Like, dentists are, you know, I haven't looked it up, but much more on Quora than they are on, you know, Medium or on Twitter's sort of falling for everybody, but Threads is on the rise for a lot of people, and so
Threads, really? Is it still alive?
Threads,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's the Facebook thing, right?
I think they're closing in on 160 million active users.
Oh,
So
wow.
they are.
I just saw that kind of marketing burst, and then I haven't paid attention since it came there.
Yeah, I think Zuckerberg announced in the recent earnings call that Threads was sort of outperforming expectations,
Oh, wow.
and I think it's going to be at the current rate. It looks like about 2 years they will surpass Twitter for
Damn.
users,
Yeah.
for active users. Yeah,
I love that you call it Twitter still as well. I the X, I can't really take it into my my mouth yet.
I mean, I think, yeah. Look, if he sells it, it's obviously going to be called Twitter again. So
Yeah.
and I think it's heading that way towards someone's going to buy it for pennies on the dollar in a few years, because I kind of shanked that one.
If that happens, I'll definitely quote you for calling it this early.
I mean,
But,
I am far from the first person to call it. I think there's a lot
okay.
of analysts who are, you can see the Sensor Tower data and the clickstream data, and their usage is down 35%. It's really weird because Elon keeps claiming that they have their highest numbers ever, but he's very specific about it. Like he uses new numbers to describe things. Yeah, it's not.
We'll follow it. Yeah, Rand,
It's sort of like Donald Trump. He says things, but you can't really tell what the thing means in the statement, and is it reliable? Why don't the numbers line up?
Yeah. Okay. If we start out, Rand, with a segue to kind of how to make a big marketing impact with a small budget, I think we probably should start at why you decided to, or maybe do a section on why you decided to bootstrap the second time around when you founded SparkToro instead of Moz. What were kind of the thinking behind not taking in those classic venture funds this time around as opposed to the last time around?
Yeah, I mean, so the biggest thing is I found that I don't like to have extremely high risk businesses, and venture is an extremely risky asset class. So if you take a look at the average sort of startup and small business survival rate in the United States, after 7 years, about 50% of those companies are still active and alive. And if you look at the venture capital invested startups, after 5 years, about 10% are alive. So that is much, much worse, right? And that means it's a much more kind of dangerous business to run, very unlikely that you will still exist and succeed. And then you look at the outcomes, about 0.9% of venture invested businesses, so a little under 1%, sort of hit the target goal, right? Which is that 10x or more returns.
Yeah.
And then you've got another 2% that hit between sort of 3 to 5x, and the rest of the businesses, well, there's another like 5% that make something more than 1x, and then there's or maybe it's a little more than that. I think there's 78% make less than 1x return. So they don't even return the money, meaning they go out of business and then they return whatever cash they have to the investor.
I know that we know the pressure
terrible.
quite well here as we're running the venture funded path. So it's come up with really ambitious plans and then try to execute all you can on it. It's been going so far for the first 5 years, and we're on the trajectory still to succeed. But let's see how it goes.
Well, and you're based in Denmark, right?
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
Yeah. So I believe the United States has a much worse venture statistic outcome than European companies.
Oh, I actually didn't know.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. This is quite contrary to most popular belief, but
absolutely,
European venture investments on average statistically outperform American ones. Granted, there's not a ton of the billion, $10 billion companies, but the average company does much better than the average American startup.
Oh, Europe.
Yeah, go Europe. I mean, I think, look, if you want sort of sustainability and responsibility and like long lasting things, Europe. If you want like go fast, break everything, destroy things, America. Right?
That's funny.
Just culturally kind of how we are.
Just maybe to double ensure that people know what it is, but bootstrap basically means that you have to make money before you spend money, as opposed to when you raise
Yeah, and
capital
to be
from
clear, we're a little bit odd, Stefan, in that SparkToro is, I don't think we're technically bootstrapped. We did raise money, but not from venture. We raised it from individuals. A lot of people like yourself, right, who work in marketing, thought the idea was a good one, and they put in between $25,000 and $100,000. We raised 1.3 million from 35 angel investors in 2018, and we paid them back. Was that 4 years later? So we 5 years later. So we sent 1.3 million back to our investors last year.
Yeah,
and now
nice.
going forward, we basically get to pay dividends. So SparkToro continues to be profitable. Every couple of years, 2 or 3 years, we plan to pay out a dividend that'll be somewhere between 10 and 40% of their initial sum. And that's how, over the course of the next 10 years, we hope to make them 4x, 5x, 10x their money by paying dividends. Yeah, it's a unique model.
So you went down this path of not really having a lot of money to spend.
Yeah.
What
So
does that
essentially,
mean?
that 1.3 million, that got us to launch. So we were able to spend about 18 months building the product. We had to buy a lot of data for SparkToro. We had a healthy amount of, what I would call sort of, personal expenses. Just Casey and I's salaries, and in the United States, healthcare is very expensive.
Yeah.
So that was a big part of that. And for the first 6 months after SparkToro launch, we were, not yet profitable, kind of growing our revenue, but we were able to hit profitability 6 months after launch, and then kind of grow from there. And yeah, it's been a great experience. It is very different than running a venture-backed business because we are extremely cautious with our spending. And it's sort of odd, in my Moz years, many times we would look at we made $5 million in profit this year. And our investors at the, board meetings would go, "What are you doing? You need to be reinvesting that in growth. We don't need to be a profitable business. That's dumb." Right? Like you're supposed to spend money fast to make more money or to grow the size of your business and influence. And yeah, that was not a great match for me. I think I'm good at running a profitable business and at being more cautious and prescriptive. And I don't love runaway spending, especially on things that, you don't know if they're going to work.
Yeah. So we're getting a lot of questions in, Rand, but I'll just continue a little while longer with my questions, and then we'll start picking it up from the audience. So, but Rand, I'm curious, what has been kind of the way you've been growing SparkToro this far? What have been kind of the growth plans for the company?
Yeah. So our biggest growth lever is essentially using other people's audiences to grow our own. So, not to take particular advantage of anyone in particular, but, Amanda and I get invited on a lot of podcasts, a lot of webinars. We do a lot of talks on stages at events. We do YouTube channel stuff. We are often, quoted in the press. We produce unique research that gets picked up and talked about. And all of those things are what has built SparkToro's brand. If you look at, for example, our Google traffic, we get nothing. Nothing outside of people searching for SparkToro itself. We get almost no search traffic. And that, that's because Google has become a big brands game. And it's if you've been around for 7, 10, 15 years and you have a big established site, you can still get Google traffic. Everybody else, not so much. And the other thing that's true is people don't really search for audience research tools.
Yeah, that was my next thing.
Yeah. We actually rank number 1 for audience research software and audience research tools. It gets us like 4 clicks a month, right? Like nobody looks for it. Because I think people don't know about the category that we are in, right? This idea of, oh, wait, I can tell you who my audience is and you'll tell me all their behaviors and demographics and give me insights into them. People don't really have a name for that, right? They haven't heard of that before. And so SparkToro has to be marketed through channels where they already pay attention. And so that's been our big thing. And then we have a freemium product. So you said, Stefan, you've used the free version of SparkToro. I think almost 200,000 people have used the free version of SparkToro now, which is incredible. It's just amazing. a lot of them have heard about it on live streams like this, right? They're like, oh, SparkToro, what is that? And then they go to the website or they search Google for SparkToro. They come to our site and then they check out the free version, search for their audience. Most of them don't sign up, right? Most for the paid version. But then 6 months later, they go, oh, I really need to know an answer to this question around my audience's behavior. I should go to SparkToro because they remember it. They have a positive association with it. So that has been our primary marketing process strategy. And we keep leaning into it.
Yeah. Some of the advantage of not having too aggressive investors is also that you can also perhaps pick and choose kind of the marketing tactics that you want to lean into and stay away from the ones you don't really want to be doing. Are you
we don't want to become beholden to like paid, right? Like paid channels, the ROI is not quite there for us. And there's very few channels and opportunities for paid spend, search spend or LinkedIn spend, which, as you know, LinkedIn is ludicrously expensive for B2B software. And most of that is because the venture-backed companies are willing to lose money on every sale in order to get growth. Yeah. Right. So they have a model that allows for unprofitable growth to acquire a market. And then, the hope is that eventually they dominate that market and they, become the market leader. That's fine for venture, but it doesn't work for us.
Yeah. When I was speaking to Chris Walker, he runs this high-end, let's call it high-end growth agency. And he said that they were used to seeing an acceptable customer acquisition cost around 48 to 60 months. Just a year back, like 5 years to get your money back from one customer. There's just crazy risk, and
that's exactly.
It requires so deep pockets to make that machine go round.
I think that's exactly 5 years was the customer payback period that HubSpot targeted as well.
Oh wow!
During their growth years, So I spent a lot of time with the HubSpot team, and we were quite friendly and close with them for a long time. And that model was wild to me, that you would be basically willing to kind of statistically lose money for 4.5 years on a customer acquisition.
It quite surprised me as I was doing this research to this conversation that you were actually one of the founders of the Inbound conference, right?
Sorry, not the conference. The website, inbound.org, which Dharmesh and I created. Dharmesh, the co-founder of HubSpot, and I created. And Casey, who's now my co-founder at SparkToro, actually worked on it as well. And so that was like a community for marketers. It was part of the whole Inbound thing. HubSpot eventually acquired inbound.org and wrapped it into the rest of their inbound efforts.
If we try to make it a little bit tangible for the people listening now, when we talk about low-cost marketing opportunities, maybe you said a few of them, but if we try to kind of be a little bit explicit about where do you see these low-cost opportunities, where should people be looking, and what is the research that they need to do?
Yeah, so my big advice here is almost everyone who invests in marketing should be using a different mix of channels. There's no one, set of recommendations that I have for everybody. And I would bias strongly against someone who's like, you got to be everywhere.
Yeah.
You don't got to be everywhere. That is terrible advice. Gary Vaynerchuk and I very much disagree on this. My advice for marketers would be choose channels that are at the intersection of your particular skill set. So things that you're really good at, things that you're passionate about and care about, channels that you know that your audience is there. So you combine those three things. I'm really great at, interviewing people, and podcasting is really strong, and I've got a great voice or something, maybe that's your special in. Fantastic. Okay. And that your audience participates and pays attention on these particular YouTube channels and these podcasts and these websites and these events. Fantastic. Okay. So I am going to make something that appeals to the people on those channels that they're going to cover. And I'm going to try and bring those guests on who run those newsletters, run those YouTube channels, run those things, and make their audience my audience. That's going to be my tactic. And someone else might say, oh, I hate doing video. I'm no good at that. I am really good at visuals that describe our field and contain a bunch of unique research. I'm going to put those on visual platforms like Instagram and Threads and LinkedIn. And that's going to be how I, build my audience. That's great. I think you should customize the channel to your strengths, your passions, and places where your customers pay attention.
Yeah, you just got me thinking about back in SEO, the SEO game, like 8, 10 years ago, whenever everybody was producing infographics to get people to
Yeah,
link to
right.
them. And like that was the big play for SEO. Put an infographic into your post. Um,
It's funny
as
because the infographic trend really died, but consumption of beautiful data graphics has not died so much. That
Yeah,
is still out there. I find we make, I would say, not true infographics, but a lot of data visualizations for SparkToro, especially when we do custom research. And those fly across the web. They'll get picked up everywhere.
yeah.
Journalists will put them into their articles. Yeah, folks will, clip them and put them in their YouTube videos and get coverage that way. It's pretty great.
And I think that's always something we think about when we do product launches, to make sure that we don't just explain the feature, but we also create some kind of message that people, like when they consume it, they'll actually be able to tell someone else about, whether it's a stat or
Yeah.
it's like a funny fact or something like that.
Yeah, I love that.
Rand, one thing that you always seem to master is kind of picking winning narratives. Like you have like a good sense of like, here's a story. Like obviously the one you had with Google last week, that was a success, but you also had the like what is it that Amanda calls it, zero click
Zero click. Yeah.
search. But like you've been able to pick a lot of narratives that are really catchy. And I'm really wondering, from a marketer point of view, what is this? So you've identified the audience and it's these people. What is the process you go through to kind of come up with that narrative that takes off?
Yeah, I think so. A huge part of that is it's not instinctual for me, or rather, it's not. I am not quick with those things. What happens is I talk to lots of people in our audience. So I talk to SparkToro's customers over email, over video, on calls, whatever. I talk to tons of people at conferences and events. I talk to tons of people like yourself. I see comments in the chat of our office hours. I consume a lot of content around the web from other folks in our audience, and because of that, I feel very close to our customer and to the marketing world. And I think that's what gives me sort of the insight to say, oh, I think this one's going to resonate, right? This matches the patterns of things I've talked about that have really lit people's eyes up. Especially if you and I are having a conversation and we talk about how hard it is to do direct attribution, especially in a world where privacy and ad blockers and Google taking away data and a whole raft of other things that are happening in that space, dark social, whatever. And we go, oh yeah, that attribution is getting really harder. And if I see, your eyes go, yeah, it
Yeah,
really is different than it used to be 5 years ago. Now it's all models and stuff, but you have to be able to do it at scale for small businesses. Attribution is kind of out. You have to do just measurement, time series or geographic based measurement. And we have a great conversation about that. I'll go, I should make a presentation about the death of marketing attribution. I should write about that on the blog. I should make videos about that. I should post that to LinkedIn. And then I can see that blow up. And now I know death of marketing attribution is a big hot topic that's going to be discussed. And for the last few years, that was something I talked about a lot.
Yeah, I think it's the office hours. Is that kind of like an open video venue to like the one we're having here today?
Yeah, similar-ish. I would say it's kind of a cross between what we're doing today and presentations. So, for example, like the next office hours, we're having a guest, Mike King, who did the big analysis of the Google leak. He's going to come on and talk about that, I think, at the end of June. And he'll probably present some slides and show some things in there. And then there'll be lots of audience participation. And, the great thing about office hours is, we have a chat over on the right-hand side of the screen. And it's just buzzing. It's wild the whole time. And a lot of times it'll be marketers helping other marketers and founders and creators and product folks helping each other in the comments, asking their own questions and then answering them and giving feedback in addition to whatever's going on screen. So it's pretty exciting.
I think that's a good, like, if you summarize this little bit, then like for the marketers watching, like you need to stay super close to the marketing and the community.
Yeah.
Speak with customers, like go to events. If you haven't created like a customer community, maybe you want to like start gathering your customers somewhere where you can kind of ask them questions, listen to what they're saying and so forth.
I think there is no, obviously SparkToro does audience research software and sort of data. But for people who say to me, oh, can I just replace my, sort of surveys and interview process with just the data inside SparkToro? The answer is no, definitely not. SparkToro can do a lot of things better than surveys can. It can do a lot of things better than interviews can, especially the sort of data at scale, right? If you want information on 16,000 people and their profiles across the web, like great. But it cannot replace the insight and emotional empathy that you get from talking to customers, talking to people in your audience. And one piece of advice I have, Stefan, is the audience for your marketing efforts, the content that you produce or the channels that you amplify your message through, they are not the same as customers. Those are two different audiences. And a lot of times people try and, especially B2B, people try and create content for their potential customers, but they don't consider who will amplify it and why. And if you don't consider the amplification set, podcasters and journalists and bloggers and social influencers and people on LinkedIn with platforms and people who write email newsletters, if you don't consider them as part of your core audience, most of your marketing will fall flat. It will not succeed because it doesn't get amplified.
Yeah.
Right? What you're really looking for is not just send a message to my customers. If you wanted to do that, you just email the ones who are already on your list.
Yeah.
But you want to reach more people, you need someone to help amplify, right? You need that algorithmic and manual sort of blast. And so you got to focus on your marketing audience, right? Your amplifier audience. And so you have to spend time with those people too.
You got me thinking about like how we do content here at Dreamdata as well, because we invest a lot of time in actually like creating the post and making sure it's a good read and like it looks nice and everything. But I think we're probably under investing in like the amplification, the like getting the wedge into kind of a new audience of who we could be selling to.
Right. If you were to go out to the space that Dreamdata tries to target, which probably is quite similar to SparkToro's audience,
yeah, somewhat,
right?
Yeah.
We don't compete, but we reach the same people, right?
Yeah.
So lots of VPs of marketing and CMOs and those types of folks, directors, marketing, all that kind of thing. And so what do they pay attention to? Why do they pay attention to those places? What makes them reshare something on LinkedIn, email it to a friend, post it in their SaaS community, in their Slack community thread, share it with the rest of their company, put it in their newsletter? What makes a podcaster want to invite you as a guest onto their show? If you have great answers to that question, you can produce content that is much more likely to earn that amplification. And that is, essentially, I would say 75% of our content is amplifier targeted, 25% is sort of core customer targeted.
Yeah, interesting. All right, Rand, I'll take some of the questions now that people are writing so they feel part of the discussion.
Yeah,
here. So
great.
We have Scott Wasserman that says, would you agree that paid B2B ads are not what they used to be? Old school paid ads, landing pages, and top of funnel white papers rarely convert to a sale. Would you use a paid ad to get them to a reel or a discussion on social channels if you target market spent time on LinkedIn or TikTok?
Yeah, let's see.
Did ads used to be better than they are today?
Let's see. They used to be cheaper, right? So ad prices
Absolutely.
were growing for a decade before the pandemic, and then when the pandemic hit, because marketers had nowhere else to spend money than online, those channels blew up in cost, and that was tough for a lot of folks who previously had sort of been like, oh, I have some advantage here. I've got margin that I can make on these ads. So I think unless you have a lot of funding and a very high customer lifetime value, and you can kind of spend against that, B2B advertising, at least the common kinds, are really difficult. I would add one caveat to that, which is many times there are big opportunities that are hard to see. For example, sponsoring someone's email newsletter in the B2B space. It can be cheap as hell, and you can reach tens of thousands of people through that. email sponsorships are remarkable. And there's no good platform where you can like
Mhm.
directly go. You have to find the newsletter and then find the
Yeah.
person and email them and be like, hey, Amanda, how many people are on SparkToro's newsletter list? And
Yeah.
the answer is like whatever, 50 or 60,000 people. And you're like, okay, wait, do you guys do sponsorships? That kind of thing. That type of outreach works really well.
That
Same with
market is really still like a wild, wild west. There's no kind of a market function yet. So you can find really good deals, and then you can find
great.
others where like, "Wow, you're crazy. I'm not never gonna pay you this."
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah,
Rand,
yeah.
I
Exactly.
interrupted you there.
No, I was just going to say, we did our first ever like advertising marketing sponsorship deal with Jay Akunzo. So he was launching a podcast and a new newsletter for marketers. And we knew that a lot of people, we can see in SparkToro that Jay is one of the most followed social accounts by SparkToro's customers. So if you look for people who visit the website, sparktoro.com, social sources, what are the top 20? And Jay is right in there. And we're like, boom, let's go. Let's,
Perfect.
sponsor his sort of podcast launch and that kind of thing. And so now, when Jay does all these interviews, he's got a little sponsored by SparkToro down there. We think it's driven a lot of people to search for us and a lot of brand awareness that wouldn't have otherwise existed. It's been great. He did some custom videos and stuff for us. So those types of relationships, I think that's where the advantage is in paid B2B spending, is going to the one, going individually to sources and sponsoring them.
I
I
think that's
wouldn't,
also the big thing about when you pick an individual creator, like that it's highly curated who is receiving these emails. While somebody searching on Google, you don't know if it's a solopreneur or an enterprise company, or if it's a person in Denmark or a person in the US.
I completely agree. And I don't love how much credit ads take credit for, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
one of the things that I think is wrong and unfair is when you look at your attribution, a lot of times, it'll say, oh, this Google ad sent you this many customers, or this Facebook ad, this Meta ad sent you this many customers. But what's really going on is Facebook and Google are excellent at being in the path on the journey
Yeah.
to an eventual conversion. And if you were to remove all your spend, you would still see that 95% of those sales happened anyway.
Yeah.
So the
No, I completely agree.
incremental lift from a lot of these advertising platforms, digital advertising, is not nearly as much as the credit they take for all the sales that you were going to get anyway.
Absolutely. There's another guy asking, Mikhail. He's asking, how are you measuring the results by using a zero-click content strategy?
Yeah.
Is that possible at all?
Measurement is possible. Attribution is not possible. So we basically gave up on attribution. We don't say, oh, how many customers did the campaign with Jay send us? What we do look at is, hey, look at the bump in our number of signups to the free version of the product. That looks pretty good. Jay put out the video yesterday. It looks like a video has about 10,000 views on LinkedIn. And we can see an extra 75, 100 new signups. Hey,
yeah,
that's pretty darn good, right? Like we know that over the course of 2 years, out of 100 folks, an average of 5 or 6 of them are going to sign up for the paid subscription thing. So you could do some, all right, we're going to statistically calculate that we think that sponsorship was worth this amount to us in ROI. We don't bother with it. Like we're so small. There's only 3 of us. It's not worth our time. But we do look at measurement, right? So we look at time series stuff and we say, gosh, I was on, Rand was on this podcast. Yeah. It came out last week. I don't really see any lift from that one. Okay, well, it was a small one. That's fine. Oh, we put up this blog post. It got this amount of traffic. We can see that a lot of those people then went and tried out the product. All right. We think that those types of blog posts work well. Or we put up this blog post. It got a lot of traffic, but nobody signed up for the product. Okay, that didn't work as well, right? That kind of thing.
Actually, when just on this topic, what would you say is the goal of your marketing? Have you picked kind of is it awareness? Is it visitors to the website? Is it free signups? Do you have sort of kind of this is what we want to achieve when we do marketing, or does it differ depending on the tactics that you're trying out?
Yeah, right now, I would say the biggest focus for most of mine, Amanda's effort, is make people aware of the field of audience research and have them build a positive association in their mind between, I want to do research about my audience, I can do that at SparkToro. The good news is there's not a lot of other places to do it.
Yeah.
Whatchamacallit, the folks who own BuzzSumo, what's their name? Brandwatch. Brandwatch has a really good enterprise version of kind of what SparkToro does, but it's so expensive. It's like
Yeah.
tens of thousands of dollars a year. You got to talk to a salesperson. It's great. Don't get me wrong. Like, if you've got the money, you should go over there. But for people who are like, I have a few $100, or, I can spend $1,000 this year on audience research, that's what SparkToro is for, right? We're sort of serving that SMB market, and even a ton of enterprises who want sort of quick data at a small price.
Yeah.
So it's that awareness building of like, what does SparkToro do? Who are they? Most people have still never heard of us, and so our job is getting the message out.
And I think that, particularly when you're like a relatively small company, still you can kind of sense the cause and effect relatively immediately of your activities, whereas the larger you get, the more troublesome it gets. So if we think outside of just the SparkToro box, I'm thinking about, like, because I can see in the comments here, speaking of like listening to what people are saying, how do you justify spending on marketing if you don't have that kind of like, this worked or this doesn't work, or how do you set the budgets?
I mean, it's like you said, part of it is intuitive. Because we're small, we can make those kinds of things. And part of it is you can measure lift, right? You can measure time series lift. So let's say you go sponsor an event, right? And you have your brand out over that. And you know that seasonality, assumptions in place, and the growth assumptions of the past 90 days, you know that on average, your traffic has been growing, let's say 2% a month. You do this event, and you see, you know what? We grew by 3% last month. That's 50% more than expected. What did we do? What did we do differently? Well, the event was one thing we did differently, and we also had this content campaign. The two of those were probably responsible for that extra 50% lift in growth rate. And then you have to use your sort of knowledge of those spaces. So if the content campaign got a number of impressions across social media platforms, you can use that. If the content campaign sat on your site, you can look at how many visits the content campaign got. You know how many people were at the event, how many people you talked to, how many people were, watched you on stage giving the talk, whether there was lots of social chatter afterwards. And so then you kind of go, okay, we think that these two investments were responsible for it. And we would estimate that it was 60% the content campaign, 40% the events. How much did we spend on each of those? Which ones are we going to do again? And you make the plan from there. So it's not impossible to measure. It's just impossible to attribute one particular set. You can't look at a sign up and go, aha, that person must have seen the content campaign, and that's what caused them to convert.
If we go a little bit deeper into the rabbit hole, because like particular for some of the people in B2B, there's going to be these 6 months or 12 months between, the leading indicator and the lagging indicator of revenue. Whereas like what we're talking about here, you can measure that there's a lift in free signups immediately.
Yeah.
But how do you then like cross the bridge to like more like the CFO metric of customers you've won?
So I do think before you can invest in a campaign like this, you have to get the CEO, the CFO, and the CMO on board. They have to all agree attribution is dying. Most of the attribution that these ad platforms are taking credit for would have happened anyway. If you can't get them to agree on that, you will never be able to invest in measurement-based marketing. You just won't. Brand marketing is straight out. A lot of content efforts will be straight out. Social media marketing won't work. Using whatever podcasts and video channels and event marketing, all of that is off the table. Because if those three people or their equivalents in your company aren't on board with the ideas, the fundamental concept of how attribution works in the modern era, you know what? Just throw money at Google and Facebook and LinkedIn. Just keep throwing, because you know what? You're going to be stuck. That's what you're stuck with. Until you can change those attitudes, you don't have a choice.
I think that there's definitely one super important thing is that you need to align. Like if they've decided that you're the marketing leader, they also need to rally around the strategy that that we're going to be pursuing. And you should probably care the most about getting the right message to the right people. I would say
What
though,
the heck
Rand,
else is marketing about?
yeah.
Marketing is right message to the right people in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. And unfortunately, over the last 20 years, it's become, how can I prove that this person who eventually bought my product or, bought my service, visited these places or saw this content or saw these ads before they made that purchase? That's not the same thing, right? That's a very different sort of warped mindset. It worked well, though. It worked well for a really, maybe a good dozen years. And I think a ton of digital marketers got trained in that era of really solid attribution. I remember, Stefan, Google used to tell you every single keyword that sent traffic to every page on your site. They would
I
give
loved
you
it.
in the referrer string, they used to send the keyword. Now it's all keyword not provided. But back when that was true, you knew so much more about your content marketing and SEO efforts.
Yeah.
It used to be the case. Facebook used to send all of the refer string of which community, which page sent traffic. You used to be able to log into your Facebook, what was it called? Insights, page insights. And they would give you almost like 50% of the information that you get in SparkToro right now was in Facebook page insights for you for free.
Yeah.
You could go see every other community that your subscribers subscribe to and all the websites, that they were visiting. No more.
And you used to be able to do retargeting for 180 or 360 days or something like that. So run a good SEO program and then retarget for the next year.
And cookies used to last forever. Third-party cookies were accepted by every browser. It's just not that way anymore.
No, I just have to say, some of the things you're mentioning here, we have solved with Dreamdata because we do run long account-based journeys and we work just like a CDP. So we record multiple steps of a user. So it's not just the
Is that with like browser fingerprinting?
No, because if you're in EU,
you can't.
You don't comply. Yeah. No, so we stay away from that. But we do track people with cookies and local storage, and if they don't convert on the first session, but only do it in the 5th session, we can still see the journey started here, and 5 sessions later, they convert. So it's actually, and we can do stuff like, the first session started with a Google Click ID, and then 6 months later, that account bought. We can then still tie connections. So it's not all what you call it in the US doom and gloom. There's actually what we're in the business of is taking anything that do leave a digital touch and trying to put that up to a B2B customer journey map. Of course, there's all these things that you mentioned here that there's a lot of things you can't measure, but the things that does leave a digital touch, we map into a chronological timeline of everything that takes place.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
I'll send you a demo video at some point.
I did. I looked at Dreamdata a little bit. I think after we met in New York, and it's cool stuff.
And speaking of Dreamdata, we're also soon launching these benchmarks, which I leaked to you like a month ago. And in there right now, you can see that Google is sitting on I think 51% of the average B2B customers' ad budget, which really surprises me, because what you really don't have on Google Ads is any kind of control of how big the people that receive your marketing, like not the people, the companies, like how many employees do they have? And like a key thing in B2B marketing is that you reach the right size of companies, but you have zero control of who's the receiver of the ads. And it still baffles me that more than 51% of the whole marketing budget go into these channels where people simply have no control of what are the companies that are receiving it.
Yeah. Interesting. I wonder if that's just a vestige of Google's historic sort of attribution platform, or if it's a suspicion that Google reaches everybody, so a bunch of our budget should be reaching them.
I think another problem is that it's very easy to drive conversions through Google Ads, like random emails signing them up. And then they can go back with that number and say, look, inside of Google Ads, we got these many emails. We have it more, doesn't say anything about quality at all that's coming out.
MQLs, SQLs, you can drive those numbers up. Yeah.
All that crap, yeah. If we look towards the coming year in terms of looking for low cost, big impact opportunities, where do you have your eyes set for the next kind of 12 months or 6 months coming up?
Yeah, I mean, Amanda and I are both investing more in Threads because that platform is growing. So from a social perspective, my suspicion is that's going to be taking over Twitter in the next few years. And so, working to sort of build an audience there and continually invest. And I've seen that grow very nicely, right? When I first started posting there, I would barely get much engagement. Comments, likes were very small. Now almost everything I post there gets significant traction. And that's great to see. LinkedIn, organic LinkedIn is still fantastic. Native video on LinkedIn, that works terrifically well. I think that one thing we are going to plan to invest in a little bit more on the SparkToro side is we're going to start building up our content engine a bit more. So we're planning on hiring a sort of part-time contract writer creator to put out, a couple pieces a week for us on some combination of like breaking news, marketing insights, and visualizations, unique research, that sort of thing. So that's going to be an investment for us as well. I don't have a great answer to like, well, what about AI? I think AI is going to make a bunch of business processes easier. I don't see how it revolutionizes marketing channels or strategy. I think it's more a tactical tool, sort of like when Excel came out, in the 1980s. It's like, oh, wow, we can do a whole bunch of things in spreadsheets that previously were like insanely difficult to do. And you had to hire a team of stats people and they'd use their slide rules and whatever. Now, no more. Like you can do all that stuff inside a spreadsheet on a computer. I think that's what AI is. It revolutionizes a bunch of tactical work that was a pain in the butt to do before.
I think, particularly I think everybody should be getting into it, but it should be for kind of leapfrogging that kind of like foundational work you need to do, but it's not gonna change any bigger. Like, I mean, like, for example, we've made a chat bot, like ChatGPT bot that has all our G2 reviews. So there's 150 of them in there. So instead of them sitting in a sheet, they're in that machine, and then we can ask the machine different questions. Like, what should we be putting into our ads, or like, what are the features that they like the most? Or
I think that's cool.
We're running out of time now, so I don't want to be overstepping the the agreement here. If people want to reach out to you or try SparkToro, for example, what should they do?
Yeah, so SparkToro.com will let you right on the homepage run an audience research report. You could just get that for free. There's no free trial, so you don't need to put in a credit card. You just try it for free forever. We also have a blog that's getting quite popular. You can check that out at sparktoro.com/blog. I personally am most active on LinkedIn, where I'm Rand Fishkin, and on Threads, where I'm at Rand DeRuyter, my wife's last name. And I'm also on Instagram for personal stuff, and Twitter. Maybe like once every week or two, I'll still log in to just look at whatever notifications are there.
You have an insanely large account on Twitter that I'm surprised
you're not
pushing
crazy
it more.
So my account on Twitter is, almost 500,000 followers. My account on Threads is about 6,000 followers. So about 1/100th the size.
Whoa.
And when I post a link on Threads and on Twitter, I get about the same and sometimes more traffic on Threads because, your Twitter reach is nothing. And most of the 500,000 people who follow me on Twitter are not active anymore. Like they look like followers, but they're not real. And of course,
that's where Elon's problem starts.
Oh my God. Everything I post on Twitter now, I mean, over the last year, I'm sure everybody's seen this if they're active there. It just gets a bunch of bot replies and like, adult content replies, right?
They've really juiced that up.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I don't understand. How does he think that that's going to make a winning platform? It's so weird. Anyway,
Rand, thank you so much. You'll be seeing me on Threads quite soon. I have completely underestimated that platform. But thank you so much, Rand. And for everybody who's listening, thank you so much for joining. And if Rand didn't reply, you just ping him one more time, and I'm sure he'll pick up the comments.
Yes, absolutely.
See you guys.
We hope you like listening to us. Subscribe to our podcast and the ones that we have been guests on.
And if you have any feedback for us, just do let us know. And should there be a guest that you think we should be talking to, then pitch us.
We're looking forward to seeing you.